Hey, happy Saturday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. And welcome back to another episode of the Sage Dragon Book Show. My name is Shaquana Divers. I am the host of this book show where I discuss thought provoking books and I just share my pleasure of reading with you. I love to read. I read vast topics. So I would appreciate if you would participate in our conversation, like, subscribe. You can find Sage Dragging on various socials. I have a YouTube page, and I'm building up this community of people who enjoy reading books and discussing the topics that the books are about. So, and I have a really fun episode planned today. So, let's get into it. So, book news before we get into today's episode. Did you all know that today was National Read a Book Day? And I swear I'm not making that up. It's a real observance. It seems like ever since the onset of social media, there's more of these new holidays coming up, more and more. I don't remember a lot of these observances years ago, but there's National Read a Book Day is kind of obvious. It's just about promoting literacy in the United States. And there's been a lot of movements over the last few years to thwart reading, and you've got book bans and a lot of controversial topics, but reading is really fun and it's expansive. But I'm not here to sell it. I just want to share the joy of it with you all. The other thing is, I'm excited. I live in Rochester, New York, upstate Western New York, and there's an organization called Writers in Books. They're a non for profit that promote literacy, books, and they do an event every year called Rochester Reads, where they select one book that they want the whole city to read, and they invite the author to come. And usually it's around the fall, like October. The author will come. It'll be this nice event reception at maybe a local venue, a museum, and the author will sign books and discuss their latest book. And it's a great, fun event for socializing and meeting other people who are in the literacy world who just enjoy reading. So this year, they have announced Soil, The Story of a Black Mother's Garden by Camille T. Dungy. And I've been seeing this book title in different spaces. So I'm excited. I also want to give props to Writers in Books. Over the last several years, they've selected a lot of books by BIPOC authors. Last year, their book was Olga Dies Dreaming by Xicto Gonzalez. You'll see it right in the back of my on my book virtual bookshelf, and that was a really good book. And I really enjoy her as an author. And the year before that, the book was The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, who is a Black sci-fi writer. So they really do promote diversity in literacy. So I just ordered the book and I hope to have it read before the event. But either way, I'll be diving into that. And if it's something that I really enjoy, I'll share it on this show. So today's episode is called An Immersion into the Works of Tayari Jones. And something that I think about a lot in this era is pleasure. And I read for pleasure. It is a hobby. And this show is a expression of that. So I wanted to give props to an author and celebrate an author who I think deserves her flowers, because she's an incredible author. And she's my favorite contemporary author. I really, really love her books, and I've read all her books and mostly all her works. So I'm going to discuss the books today. She has a book called American Marriage, Leaving Atlanta, The Untelling, and Tayari and Silver Sparrow. So let's get into the author spotlight. So Tayari, which means she is prepared in Swahili. She is a Black woman, 54 years young. She was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. She is a Spelman grad. She was raised in like a socially conscious family. I've read that her father, was really active in the civil rights movement. So she got that nourishment that helps when people pour into you, and she got that foundation. And she was mentored by some heavy hitters, Pearl Cleage, who's also a powerful author. And I remember reading some of her works back in the 90s. And Janetta Cole, who was the previous president of Spelman. She has won various awards for her writing, the 2019 Women's Prize for Fiction, for American Marriage, which was an Oprah Book Club selection. She's a Hurston Wright Legacy Awardee for Leaving Atlanta, which is incredible. I'll get into that. And she also won the Lifetime Achievement Award in Fine Arts from the Congressional Black Caucus. So I'm glad she's getting her props as an author. So I'm going to delve into these different books. Now, I decided to do this episode in the order in which I read her books, my reading journey with Tayari. So the first book that I read by hers was Silver Sparrow. And I used to be a part of a book club way back around 2011. And some of you may not know this, but in the early 2000s, I lived in Baltimore and I was part of a writers collective. We wrote poetry. Sometimes we would read our poetry on radio shows, and we would get together in a cafe in the Baltimore County area. Shout out to my collective that I was a part of. So when I moved back to Rochester, I wanted to stay in contact with them. So several years later, they formed this book club called Soma Books, and we read some really good books. And one of the books was Silver Sparrow. And this book was really good. It was a fiction book. It was published in 2011. It's set in Atlanta in the 80s. And I have a quote that is one of the kind of the concept behind the book, which is, my father, James Witherspoon, is a bigamist. This is a story of a man's deception, a family's complicity, and the two teenage girls caught in the middle. James Witherspoon has two families, one public, the other a closely guarded secret. But when his daughters meet and form a friendship, only one of them knows the truth. Theirs is a relationship destined to explode. Okay, so this is the concept of the book. There is a man, James Witherspoon, and he's like, this is around the 80s, and he is a fairly successful Black man. He runs his own limousine company. He's married, he has a daughter. And one day he meets this other woman. He's actually goes out shopping in the department store and he meets another woman and they start to date. And this isn't any spoilers because this is just the background of the book. And he ends up marrying this other woman. He goes to another state and marries the other woman. The other woman knew about the first wife and she has a child for him. And then what happens is that over a long period of time, he has two families um, in the same town in Atlanta. Now, the other woman and her daughter live in the shadows of the first wife and daughter. And for years, like they would do things like the mother would take the little her daughter, the other mother, and they would go to the mall and follow the first wife and daughter around. And it was really doing some things psychologically to this other little girl. James would go and visit them when he could. He would bring them food and money and clothes, but they got the short end of the stick. And the little girl, like I remember one time, she was smart, the second child, and she got accepted into this program, summer program, and she couldn't go. Her father told her because the first one was going. Well, eventually, what happens is that they end up in the same high school and they become friends and form a bond. Again, the first daughter still doesn't know, but the second is knowing that this is her sister and she's loving her sister, but she's also being deceptive. And the book is written in from the perspective of both daughters over time as this unfolds. So it really is really really good. I have a clip that I want to play to give some more background on this interesting story.
Gift to my older sister. She's 12 years older than me, and we did not know each other when we were growing up because we have the same father, but we have different mothers. We actually grew up across the country from each other. So all my life, I felt like I had a sister and I didn't have a sister. And this book, Silver Sparrow, the story of two sisters connected by a father but with different lives, this was my gift to her. And I wrote it. I feel this is really my favorite of my novels.
So, okay. Well, I will say is that, uh-oh, I think it might be a little technical. Oh, I think it's done now. So, Tayari's situation isn't what the plot of the book is about, because I was looking at the full interview. So, in the plot of the book, it's a deceptive piece where the husband, cheats on his first wife, has this second wife and child without the first wife knowing. Tiari's situation, it sounded like though her sister was from a different time in the relationship. So I just wanted to clarify that. But she is saying that bond of having a sister was one of the inspirations behind why she wanted to write this. Let's go further with that clip.
Because it is my most personal. And when I wrote it, I was actually at a very, very dark place in my career. I had published two novels. I was proud of them, as anyone would be, and I felt really honored to be able to publish and do my life's work. But I was dropped by my publisher because I wasn't making enough money for them. And I was devastated that there was a book program called BookScan where they could type your name in and it would give them a number as to your value. The value of your work has been reduced to units sold. And I was about 3/4 of the way through Silver Sparrow, but I kept writing it because I'm a teacher. I teach writing. And I tell my students that you write a book not for a market, a publisher, an agent. You write it because your heart calls you to write it. So how could I face my students if I was allowing some computer program to make me abandon the most personal book of my life? So I just kept writing it. I just kept my mind and heart on my sister, and I kept writing the book.
So, wow, I was really floored when I heard that. Like I got goosebumps because, I think about so much of how, in the music industry and other fields, we're reduced to numbers. Nowadays, it's social media. It's how many likes you get, and if you put digital content out there, and I have this blog, or people have podcasts, or pictures, or heartfelt posts they do. Everything is these metrics, but it doesn't always equate to the value. I mean, that was such an incredible book, and I really was like, wow, the fact that she could have not continued if she was solely basing her artistry on BookScan or on a publisher. So I don't know if there's any people out there, and I may have some listeners in the future, but I wanted to pose this question: have you ever gone against the grain and continued to do something when numbers may have told you different? And this could go for a lot of things in life. It might not even mean, and it may not have to be just about what you do for your vocation or what you do for your business, although it could be. So if you're an entrepreneur, or if you do digital work, if you're a musician or some type of artist, or if there have been things that you felt like was the right thing to keep going, like Tayari said, her heart told her to keep going, the love that she had for her sister, and the fact that she felt like this was an important story to bring into the world and create, made her keep going. So, anybody out there ever experienced that, where they kept going even though there was data that might have suggested otherwise? And while we're waiting on those comments, um, let's keep going with this story because it gets better. Producer, can you play the next clip?
Then the most amazing thing happened. Thing happened. Picture this. I went to a book festival. I was embarrassed because, like I said, I had been dropped by my publisher. My earlier works were out of print. But I had accepted the invitation, and I'm not the type of person to be a no-show. So I gave my reading, and a woman came to me and she said, I think I could help you. I didn't know who she was. And honestly, I was a bit apprehensive. I didn't know her. You meet some strange people at festivals. I'm just saying. So the woman led me through the crowd, and she put my hand in the hand of a publisher. And again, I was apprehensive because I thought the publisher would just, use her computer program and decide that I wasn't valuable enough. But the publisher said to me as I was leaving, before you go, she said, tell me, how do you know Judy? And I said, I don't know anyone named Judy. And she said, no, 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 I mean Judy Bloom, who just introduced us. It was as though my nerdy childhood had come to rescue me in my time of need. And that was on a Friday. And by Monday, I had a publisher for Silver Sparrow. So I think of it as such a gift. I feel that this book was meant to be in the world. And it also taught me something. My students sometimes, when I tell them this story, they say, oh, you see, Professor, This just goes to show it's just who you know. But I tell them, no, it's about completing your work and following your heart. Had I not followed my heart and completed my work, I would not have had anything to give when Judy Bloom introduced me to a publisher. So my takeaway from that is always, when it comes to art, follow your heart. You know the work you're meant to do. When you do your part, doors will open by themselves.
Yay! That was so great, wasn't it? I loved hearing that story. I didn't even know it. Like, this book was one of my favorite books. I really highly recommend it. And shout out to Judy Bloom. Thank you, Judy, for hooking up our Tayari with a publisher so that she was able to put Silver Sparrow out there. And I think it's true. You never know. You got to work your artistry, focus on being a great artist. You know, I talk to my children who are artists all the time about that. Keep working on your craft, cultivating it, and putting yourself in a position to be, discovered and celebrated. But keep working on it and not letting these numbers dictate, you know our destiny, because it's just one part of it. And now we got AI. It's almost like, this is something that is happening in the job world, where people are going out for jobs and they've got these applicant tracking systems that could just, you got all this work that you've done, a resume that captures it, and an AI tool doesn't do it justice. So we've got a lot of these barriers to face, and I think that as a community and as people and as humans, we really should push back on these metrics and not let them be the only things that make us feel like we're worthy and make our artistry feel like it's worthy, because it's not. There's a comment that came up that says, hell yeah, that's the road, the ride or die stuff. We keep hustling until enough people see us in the art we offer. Thank you, True, on IG for that comment. Yeah, so I was really, you know, uh, inspired by that story. So some a little bit more about the book. So it gets into the sister relationship between Dana and Charisse, who are the girls, and the story is told from both perspectives. It's also a book about fathers and daughters, about marriage, about deception, infidelity, adultery. So some heavy topics. It's bigamy in modern times, and I remember reading when it came out, this story that was saying a lot of times, I don't know if this is still a thing, but this was around 2011. They were saying that, like, in funeral homes, the funeral directors keep smelling salts, because it's been a common thing where at a funeral of a man, a whole family, another family can come that the original family is not even aware of, another wife, other kids, and it causes them to pass out. And it's been so common that they have smelling salts to revive the people. So this book was also talking about something that wasn't talked about as much in the United States in modern times, which was, bigamy. And the way they did it, James and the wife, the second wife, they were living in Georgia, but they went to another nearby. I think they went to like Alabama or maybe one of the Carolinas. And his cousin stood up for him. So his cousin was like the only one that knew all along. And what did that do to him? He's showing up at the barbecues knowing that his cousin got two wives and two kids. But yeah, it was really good. I really want to see somebody like a Kerry Washington get her hands on this book, because I feel like this would make a great series, but I think it needs to be done well. I think Hulu could do a good job with it, or maybe even like Amazon Prime. When I think about this, the shows they have, this could be really, really good. So I hope that someone makes a series about this. Lastly, the title Silver Sparrow. I wanted to share the author. She was asked what made her use that title. When the book, in the story, different features, and the girl that was the mother, the child of the side piece, she was really, really pretty, and she had this long hair. And her sister appreciated that about her. She loved was the second fiddle kid. So it was like she was the silver sparrow of the book, the silver girl. And then it was also the play on his eye is on the sparrow. So I thought that that was another interesting piece of it. But if you want a good book that's like a page turner, check out Silver Sparrow. It was really good. So so after I read, hold on, let me just check and see any comments because I tend to rush through this and I want to take my time. Um, okay, so I don't see anything. So after I read Silver Sparrow, I was like, oh my God, this book was so good. Let me see what other books are by her. Then I came across this book called Leaving Atlanta. And wow, Leaving Atlanta, even even that cover is so haunting. The children who attend the same elementary school. So this book was set fiction. Again, all of Tayari's books are set in Atlanta, and but they're different time periods, but they're all post civil rights. So like the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, into the 2000s. So Leaving Atlanta was inspired by the Atlanta child murders. And it was told through the voice of the children living through that horrific time. And I was like, wow, when I was reading it, it was so sad and good, though, and scary because I didn't even know about the Atlanta childhood murders. I mean, I was 3 years old when they were happening because they really were one of America's big horrific tragedies that involved children. And for the level of tragedy and horror that happened, you would think that the country would talk about it more. And I don't think it gets enough attention. And it's probably because it's such a ominous and heartbreaking thing to talk about. But I still don't think that we should look past that tragedy. So just to give you a little bit more information, the Atlanta child murders referred to a tragic series of killings that occurred in Atlanta during the late 70s and early 80s. It was a 2 year period targeting primarily Black children. Beginning in July 79, the discoveries of bodies and increasing numbers of disappearances quickly drew public concern, culminating in the formation of the Committee to Stop Children's Murders in the 80s. The grassroots group aimed to raise awareness and improve safety of children. And I won't read it all of that, but the way in which the police issues, it brought to light the systemic issues of poverty and crime in marginalized communities. And that is captured as well in Leaving Atlanta. But what I like so much about the book is it's not like the way I'm telling it to you, like this brainy way of telling it. It's a heartfelt story because it's told through the voices of children. So it Tayari mentioned that she was actually growing up at the time. She was a kid herself during this time, and one of the little boys in her class was a victim of it. And I remember growing up in the 80s, and childhood kidnappings was a thing that we were aware of, and we were scared of. The whole "Do you know where your child is?" that scary commercial that came on at 10 o'clock at night. And remember the show Adam that scared the daylights out of us. So we had a lot of traumatizing messaging because these things were happening in the country, to children. And it made us edgy. And I think I still have some of that in me. And is partly why I was so overprotective as a parent, and even when I babysat. But in getting back to the book, she it was about these three kids mainly that were living their lives. So they were still living as children, normal kids. They had their crushes at school. They had the things that got on their nerves, parents and things that were stressing them out. One of the little girls, her parents were going through a divorce. Another little boy was in a very sadly uh, aggressive, like his father was very overbearing. So they all had their own lives at the same time that all this terror was going on. And that is what she captured so well. And also, I don't know how she did it, but even though she was an adult writing it, it felt very authentic to the kids. So I was like, wow, that was really what started making me have so much respect for her as an author, because I was like, she really did a good job of making you feel like these were little kids writing about what was going on during that time. I have a little well, I have two other forms of media that I want to share. So first, I'm going to show this book trailer that was done about the book. Yeah, so I thought that that was well done by I'm sorry I don't have the name of it, but if you do a keyword search on YouTube, you can find that book trailer. But yeah, I started doing a lot of reading up on it once I read that book, because like I said, I wasn't aware of it. I wanted to put it out there to anyone that's listening. Did any of you hear about the Atlanta child murders? Had you ever heard of this horrible tragedy? And yeah, I have a friend who lives in Georgia, and I noticed that Kai Mays, she does not post about anything except missing kids. So on her Facebook page, she's always, I mean, it's not a laughing matter. I was just saying that she doesn't post about anything else. So it's still a lot of children who go missing, and black and brown kids who go missing, who don't get the same level of media. And that was one of the things that I was reading that was a controversial part of this situation. But let's also get more into the book. So I have another clip that I want to play. This clip is Tayari reading one of the children, Sweet Pea, who's experiencing life during this time.
Another child has been killed. If you keep in mind, in the 1970s, there was no Twitter, no Instagram. We had to wait until the evening news to find out what had happened in the day. And this is when she looks at the news and sees that one of her friends has been reported missing. It was a regular night. I was wrapped up like a mummy in my quilt with the TV turned to the 11 o'clock news. I had watched the 6 o'clock show with Mama, but I like to watch it again at 11 to make sure that everything is still okay. Channel 2 is the best channel because they got Monica Kaufman, a black lady, giving the report. As soon as the theme music went off and the camera zoomed in on Monica, I knew that somebody else was dead. Whenever there was bad news, she took a breath before she talked, like she was fixing to dive underwater. I held my breath too and waited for her to tell us who it was. Please, God, let it be far from here, I prayed right quick. But I should have known that praying only makes things worse. It gets God's attention, like with Job. Right there in the middle of the screen was my friend Rodney. Monica has this way of talking about everything like it was just a ribbon cutting downtown or something like that. She said, a 12th child has been reported missing in Southwest Atlanta tonight. Police are looking for information regarding the disappearance of Rodney Green. On and on like that. She said almost the same thing when Jashante next door came up missing. It would seem like there should be some different words to talk about two people that were nothing alike, but all Monica had to say about both of them was that they were gone. Then she showed Rodney's mother and father. They both just said how much they wanted him back, just like Miss Viola had said back in October. And even I was almost the same. I was on this same couch in my same pajamas, staring at this same TV like I had never seen one before. But last time, my mama was with me. We knew Jashante was missing because his mama had been all over the neighborhood looking for him. She knocked on our door twice. You seen Shanti, she said. I had the door locked because my mama wasn't home. No, ma'am, I hollered. She came back again, and I said no. Mama came home before Miss Viola came back again. Miss Viola had on a black skirt and a yellow and green top. Thick stockings, the color of white ladies, stretched up her legs and tied off at the knee. She sat down at our rickety table while Mama fixed her a cup of black coffee. When was the last time you seen him? Mama asked her. When he went off for school this morning. Mama looked at the clock. It was 9 o'clock at night. She had only been looking for him since 8. I sat as quiet as I could so I wouldn't get sent to my room. You gonna call the police now? You think I should? Yeah, Mama said. They can help you look. But I got some hot checks at Big Star, some other places around town. Her voice faded out. Sometimes the police pick people up for stuff like that. Viola, Mama said, this ain't no time to be worried about no bad checks. This is your baby. You're right, Miss.
Well, yeah, so I'm telling you, that book is good. You hear all of the different parts of it. I mean, um, imagine that feeling, even when you may have not known where your child was for a few minutes, which I have gone through, which is heart wrenching. And then to be in that situation, like the detail, and then it gets into like she's worried about if she should call the cops because she got bad checks. So that's what I mean by like she just really captures the different experiences, that black folk be grappling with when it comes to like, do you engage with the police or not? Or yeah, so um it was really, really good. I have another clip that I'm gonna show. One more clip about leaving Atlanta. Let's put that on.
Ella said. She pushed up on the table. Makes you think you have that kind of power. And I was relieved and offended at the same time. And I think that as a writer, I sometimes I do feel that the written word in our work as writers unsettles and shines light. But at the same time, I'm sometimes frustrated. Like during Black Lives Matter, I couldn't write fiction because I felt like, what am I doing? I'm just here playing with my imaginary friends while these young people are in the streets. And I felt the limits also of art. And I feel like I struggle with that all the time. And the only way that I could get myself to write this summer or last summer was to send a check to the funds to get the kids out of jail. And once I had sent money, I felt like every time I got a kid out of jail, I was then allowed to spend some time on my own work.
Oh, interesting. Um,
Yeah, I think that one part of it that got a little cut off was she was talking about how she felt guilty because the little boy that in real life that died, who was a victim of the Atlanta child murder, she didn't like. So she had to go and get counseling because she felt like part of her not liking him might have caused the problem. And the counselor, that's when the counselor said, "You don't have that kind of power." And she's like, oh, thank goodness. But then it also low key made her feel away. But then she's also talking about how she wants to use artistry and writing fiction. Now I say this quite a bit. I think that fiction is a great way to learn because for me, especially when I read historical fiction, I notice that the characters help me retain the information a little bit better than when I'm just reading straight facts. Like there's Imani Perry, who she's a really incredible, intelligent woman, black scholar. And she has this book called Blacks and Blues that came out this year. And I was listening to it on audio, and she has a really creative way of coming up with her concepts. But I noticed that the last couple of books by her, I didn't retain the information as much because she's giving you all these facts about history, um, but it's very factual and it's very historic. And I tend to really gel with characters and people and like what's going on with them. And then the historical context causes me to go down and I learn and then I go back and read more about it. So I would say that when people do fiction writing, they shouldn't feel like they're not doing enough because if more of us read fiction, good fiction, well written that has accurate context, it's gonna educate us and uplift us as humans. I want to stop there. So yeah, that was Leaving Atlanta, another excellent book by Tayari that I highly recommend. Any other comments out there? Across the country for blacks, ATL child murders was the warning symbol by the elders on how to move swiftly and smart in the street. Heard it so much, got on my nerves, but I get it now. Okay. So Alicia on X did hear a lot about it. And maybe it depended on like where in the country you were, because I didn't hear anything about it. I grew up in the five boroughs in New York. But again, I was also 3 when it happened. And then by the 80s, they did talk about kidnapping a lot, though. Like I said, it was like, they're going to snatch you up. We always heard that. And then it was this thing going on around vans. And, they had us afraid to even walk by a white van or any kind of van because they said they were snatching kids up and putting them in the vans. So they did drill that into our head a lot about stranger danger and things like that. But yeah, that was a serious, that book really pulled on your heartstrings, especially the very ending, the last part of it. One of the There's this whole argument going back and forth with I think it was Octavia's parents. They were divorcing, and the father lived in South Carolina. The mother was still living in Atlanta, and he wanted his daughter to move there because he was scared for her life. And eventually, she does go to move it with her father and her stepmother because the murders just kept happening. And there's this line where she said, "I'm gonna miss my mom. I'll be missing my mom for the rest of my life." And I was like, oh, it it was just really, really beautiful book, beautiful tragic book, and I highly recommend everyone read it. Okay, so now again, I'm saying these in the order of what I read them and not the order. But the next book, this is Tiari's latest book. I think I just saw it on her Facebook that she just finished the new book, so I'm excited about that. But her latest novel came out in 2018. It was called American Marriage. So this is a completely different plot. This was an Oprah Book Club pick, and it was very successful. It won a lot of awards. It was set in Louisiana and Georgia, and it follows the lives of a young married couple. And it has themes of marriage, the criminal justice system, conscious and unconscious bias. I'm going to play a clip from a book, someone who did a book review of it, so that she can provide the synopsis and then I'll add to it. So let's put that on, producer. Thank you. I know we got a lot of videos in this episode.
And then we have check whether it was and it really actually became a conversation in the real world between myself and my mother about my family's own experiences of institutional racism. Okay, so first, a synopsis of the book. So American Marriage is in essence a story of love between Celestial, who's an artisan doll maker, and Roy, who's a rep for a textbook company. But it's also a story about tragedy, about a young African-American couple who experience unbelievable misfortune and heartbreak through this incident of racism early in their marriage. And at the crux of the story is that Celestial and Roy have been married for a year and a half, and Roy is falsely accused of rape. And this incident happens on an evening when the two of them have gone down from Atlanta, Georgia, to visit Roy's family in the town of Elo, Louisiana. So Roy and Celestial spend the night in the Piney Woods Inn Motel, and there they have an argument, and to cool off, Roy goes to find some ice. And while he's out, he meets a woman at the ice machine who has an injured arm and a sling. And since she cannot use her arm, he offers her a neighborly gesture to help her out by carrying her ice back to the room. And he then also fixes a plumbing issue for her in her room and props open a window for her. And he then leaves the room and goes back to his own room to his wife, Celestial. And then later that night, the woman from the ice machine reports to the police that a man entered her room and sexually assaulted her. And she reports that she's certain it can only be Roy, who she met early in the evening. But he's actually in his room with Celestial at the time, and so this couldn't have happened. But the police, break down their door and forcefully break into their room and rip both Roy and Celestial from their beds, dragging them into the street in the night clothes. And so the story continues after Roy's wrongful conviction as he experiences 5 years in prison. And he's let out early, but throughout the story, it explores dynamics of love and life and family and friendship, and Roy and Celestial's relationship. And it's always been very complex, but it becomes even more so with the added element of Roy's imprisonment. And as it unfolds around their marriage, the marriage slowly breaks down and evolves as it's shaped by this happenstance event that was really completely out of their control.
Yeah. So, do y'all want to go to the library or go to the bookstores, or today's National Reading Day? If you want a good book, get that book, because she just broke down the plot. And there's even more to it than that. The other cool thing about this book that I like is, and it was done in Silver Sparrow, it was done in Leaving Atlanta, and it's done in American Marriages, the various point of views. So in American Marriage, it's written in the point of view of, from the point of view of Roy, the husband who ends up getting convicted of a crime he didn't commit, and the point of view of Celestial, who is his wife, who I didn't like. I did not like her. And there's some people that I know that are like readers, and they sometimes don't like a book if they don't like a character. And I get that, because that's, we're all wired different. I don't have to like all the characters that I read in order to feel like a book is good. But I was really frustrated with her beyond that. But she grew up, and her father was very well off. He invented something that caused them to be a rich black family in Atlanta. She was free. She was able to like go to college. She was an artist. She made these dolls, these really exquisite doll babies. And she met Roy in college, and he had came from more humble beginnings. His biological father was in prison, but then his mother married the father that raised him. They were like deeply rooted Christian, and he got out of Louisiana, made it to Morehouse, went to college, I think got his MBA, and wanted to open up a business. And they had this business together. Was going to help her with her doll shop, and just going to visit, driving. They drove to Louisiana to visit in-laws. They end up in this small town motel. He's trying to do a good gesture where he's helping this older woman who's disabled. Him and his wife had an argument, so he wanted to get some air. So he stepped and was like, let me just go get some ice. He goes, gets the ice. And this is, it shows you how quick life can change, how quick our lives can be altered over things that is not within our control. It wasn't his fault, or his wife's fault. He goes to help the woman in the room, helps her with the plumbing situation, and she goes and accuses him of rape. And he ends up getting convicted. And he had a long sentence. He had 5 years. And so all this stuff goes on with them during the 5 years. They start writing letters to one another. And I won't give up. Most of what I said is in the background of the book. It's not spoilers, but read it. Read American Marriage. And it it got into like Celestial's feelings, and she started having feelings for someone else, Roy's resentment, and then it was their families. And I felt, I really felt for Roy's mother. I really felt for her. um that was heartbreaking, because damn, you do all of that to get your son out of Louisiana to school, for him to come back and end up with a rape charge. So, and it's not that he was a perfect man. He went through stuff and he had anger issues, but it deals with a lot. And that's what I love about her books. That's why I'm celebrating her, and I'm trying to encourage you all to pick up one of her books, because they're good, they're relatable, and they're nuanced. They're complex characters. They're very authentic. Like, and I've read with a lot of these writers that end up with these good books, they'll have like people read them, and then they got to be open to feedback. And that's a humbling thing as an artist. And they're open to it. And then the feedback sometimes, she was it this book? Yeah, I think she said this book originally was just through the point of view of one of the husband or the wife. And then she wrote it through a multiple point of view, which gave it its depth to me. And I like that too, because um you know how they say the first lie wins. And I remember growing up during a time where we usually got, as um Chimamanda used to say, a single point of view, the danger of the single story. Remember her TED talk that went viral like 10, 15 years ago? But it's true, a lot of times we got that one perspective. And my Aunt Linda always would say, it's three sides to a story. It's your side, their side, and the truth. And sometimes I would get frustrated when she said that, because it can almost, depending on how it was said, it can kind of come off like you're not believing the person in front of you's view. But there are different perspectives on something, on how a marriage gets bad. And that's what this book talks about, how marriages and relationships may degrade over time. And what goes into that, and it was done in a way that was really, really well done. It had me thinking also about our expectations of what a loving partnership in a marriage should be. And actually, I wanted to pose that question to anybody that may be listening. I know that you all may not have read the book particularly, but like one of the things that came up was, should was Celeste, um, was it her duty to stay faithful to her husband? Was it her duty to stay in love with him and keep the marriage going? There was a pregnancy involved. So um, I wanted to put that out there. With the passing of time, how have your views on love and marriage changed? If anybody wants to share that. And I'm not necessarily asking about your own individual experiences, because that's a whole nother episode. But when you think about love or marriage, and how we're the times we're in now, or how you have aged, and what you thought love and marriage were about, how have it's changed? Anybody want to share? Anybody dare to share? That's what this book questions, like a good book makes you think about things. Because what would you do if you're in these situations? And I guess it kind of gives you more empathy for people. We can be extremely judgmental. I was having that conversation recently with my mom about, judgment. True on IG had a comment. What's that? Life is tricky that way. Reminds me of Central Park 5, how they got framed and their lives were ruined. Yes, true. And I heard an interview that Tayari was on when she was talking about the book. And she said that she doesn't just write a book, like she has to be inspired by a character. And one day she was somewhere and she heard a couple arguing. And I think the couple mentioned prison, and it gave her that spark. And then she went there with the concept and plot of the story. But yeah, framed and lots of people, there's people that admit to things that they didn't do and they take pleas. And we're going to have a whole couple of episodes on the prison and the criminal justice system, because there's a couple of books that I've read this year on that topic. A really good book that came out this year called The River is Waiting, that I read earlier this summer, deals with that. There's another book called Chain Gang All Stars that I've been reading. So I do want to do a deep dive into the criminal justice system. But, this was a love story. So that was a part of it. But the main concept of the book was about love and this relationship between Roy and Celestial, but how the circumstances of their life tested their love and their relationship. So it was really, once again, really good. It got a lot of awards, as it should have. So we're getting there. And so then there was The Untelling. So we're moving on to, this is the last book that I'm going to cover. Now, remember when I said early in the episode that, like I was so excited after I read Silver Sparrow. I was like, oh my goodness, I want to read more of her work. So then I read Leaving Atlanta. And then I heard about this book, The Untelling. I could not find this book for years. And I read Silver Sparrow around 2011 and Leaving Atlanta right after that. Now, you might remember in the clip that I just showed where she said her books were out of print. Maybe that's why I couldn't find it. I remember going into this Black bookstore here in Rochester. I was looking for it and I could not find it. So I just read this book recently. I got it from the library. So I'm glad it made its way back in print, because it was the second novel after Leaving Atlanta, which was her first book. So the order is Leaving Atlanta, The Untelling, Silver Sparrow, and then American Marriage. But The Untelling was published in 2005. It's, again, set in Atlanta, 90s, mid 2000s. Now, this is a totally different plot. So this tells the story of a woman, of this young lady who had a tragedy when she was 9 years old. And it deals with themes of grief. It deals with depression, shame, class, but also like the gentrification that started happening in Atlanta, certain neighborhoods, Black neighborhoods in like the 90s. It also deals with infertility and deception. And I do have a little clip I want to show that provides a synopsis. This is my last clip. And I want to give a shout out to my producer, AJ, working so hard, showing all these clips to everybody.
Review and our The story follows Arya and quite a few other characters as they live in the city of Atlanta. Arya's life is uprooted and turned upside down when she is 10, and her father and baby sister are killed in a car accident that takes place, and with all of them in the car, and it picks up from there, and you get to see Arya as an adult and how she is living her life as an adult, still in the shadow of that tragedy that's taking place. And the shadow of that tragedy also follows the other surviving members of her family, and it colors the decisions that she makes and the life that she lives and how they relate to each other and how she sees life and how things are going on in her life and what her expectations are.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I didn't remember when I was listening to the video in the beginning that music in the background because it was kind of distracting. But I thought the the person who had that page did a good job of enthusiastically talking about the untelling. I think this is another hidden gem because I didn't see as many people talk about this book. And it was probably because it was before the age of like Bookstagram and Book Talk that tends to popularize like a lot of the newer books. But this is a good one too. And as the person on YouTube talked about, it is it is another like tragedy. The girl Ariana had a family, mommy, her daddy. She's riding in a car with them on a day on her way to her dance recital, and they get into a car accident, and the father dies, and she's in the car. Her mother was holding her little baby sister, and then it was her and her big sister were in the back seat, her mother with the baby in the front seat, and her father driving. The baby died and the father died. The mother, the older sister, and Ariana survived. But Ariana, I'm not saying her name right, it's like Ariande. Ariande was 10, and she stayed in the car while her father was like taking his dying death, like he was transitioning. And was so scared about it that she like closed her eyes and closed her ears as he was saying like his final words to her. And she carried so much guilt for years about that. She felt like it was a selfish act. And it's just something, the things we internalize, right? Like this wasn't her fault. And then as time went on, their lives completely changed. Her mother was grief stricken. It impacted the way that the mother lived. They had financial issues. And then they ended up like, um, having a change in their quality of life. And yet Arianda ends up going to college. A friend of the father pays for her to go to college and go to Spelman, common theme, right? And she graduates out and she becomes a like a literacy teacher. And at this time, also, the neighborhood is kind of changing. Like she was in this neighborhood that was once somewhat like middle class, but then it ended up changing to a lower kind of class area. So class is really explored in there, like who's classy and what does it mean to be poor? What does it mean to be ghetto, bougie? Those types of things are dealt with. But again, her characters are really rich. She ends up in this relationship, and he's a good guy, but she has a secret that she finds out about herself that she keeps from him. So that's a big part of the book, is the deception. And a lot of this is related to the tragedy and her grief. And her sister deals with it a different way. The mother deals with it a way, and she deals with it a way. And then there's also her friendships and There's a lot of different characters in this because she's also like teaching poorer girls. She has a literacy program that her and her friend, who she's roommates with, they both work for this not for profit. So you get a glimpse into like, Atlanta and the different people. So it was a very tender story. It was really, really well done. There's this quote that I won't read the whole thing, but the person Erica Dreyfus has a blog called From My Bookshelf, and she said Tayari is really genius in writing about class. The scene in which Aria sits and watches as the pregnant teen from her literacy class does calligraphy to address envelopes for her roommate's wedding invitation is so rich. A regular middle class girl, newly graduated from college, but without family to draw on. Arya looks in wonder at both women and sees clearly how strange each is to the other, and most distressingly, how far she is from either. Again and again in The Untelling, Tiari captures those economic complexities and brilliantly articulates the specific prism of the young, gifted Black women who've gone to Spelman and remained in Atlanta, expecting their Morehouse man, expecting a lot of themselves, and caught in a richly conflicted relationship to all the various neighborhoods of the city. This one's too bougie, that one's too ghetto, this one uneasily gentrifying, that one stubbornly down at the hills. That's well done, Erica Dreyfus. And I can relate to the this all this stuff around neighborhoods, and because it's something that I'm constantly thinking about, because like in America, the way that these our neighborhoods have been designed, there are certain components that make something be better, that makes something richer. The nicer neighborhoods have the grocery stores and the complexes. But then on again, some of these nicer neighborhoods are not walkable. And then they're causing people to have health issues, but yet they're bougie. And then you have some city areas that are considered to be lower income. People turn their nose at, they call them ghetto, but they have these sidewalks and they have trees, which actually improve your oxygen and your health. So are they ghetto? So that's some of the things I think we should really kind of think about. But it's like this part where you know uh Arianda, she's living with her roommate, and they both went to college, and they decide to work for a non-for-profit, which you're not making money doing that. And the neighborhood they're living in isn't the greatest, and her boyfriend can't stand it. Ariana's boyfriend cannot stand the neighborhood, and they're gonna move eventually, but they're just like waiting their lease out. And so he comes over one day and he's like, you and your roommate are a trip, because y'all went to college and y'all choose to stay in this neighborhood like it's crackheads around and all of that. So then it becomes like, that's what I mean by she really explores class in it, and I think it's like thought provoking. So another really good story. It was heartbreaking that for her to lose her father at such a young age and to have all that grief, and then the things that it caused for the mother and for the sister. And the mother became kind of mean, and she took out a lot of her grief and her rage on her daughters. And then that impacted how they sought relationships and love. And yeah. So another book about things not within our control, but just so well done. Such rich characters. Before I go, a couple of more things. Something that I saw Tayari talk about in one of her interviews, and I've seen it written in some reviews, is how much the city of Atlanta is a character as well in all her books, and especially post civil rights, because there was a expectation of what Atlanta was going to become after the civil rights era. And then, due to different changes in the 70s and the 80s, the 90s, it is what it is now. So that's something that she deals with. If anyone has ever read other books that authentically show life for everyday people, regular degulars, I would love to hear more about some of the other books that show that, and don't just sanitize it or spin it. But she does that really well. But one of the things I wanted to ask you all was, how do you how did I phrase this? How has Atlanta changed since the MLK era? This sounds like a question you see on Reddit with 1,000 comments. I might put it on there. Because it had a lot of promise and it still does. And it's been such a mecca for Black middle class mobility. The show, Fight Night, showed that. If anyone has seen that, with Kevin Hart and Sam Jackson, about the the fight with Muhammad Ali and what was happening with these gangsters and their vision for trying to like really build the city and launch on it. It was also touched on in BMF, the last two seasons, when the brothers start moving down there. And we it's probably a lot of documentaries on that, but it's one of the cities that concentrates large amounts of Black millionaires and people who are successful. But there's also a lot of poverty, and you're still within a Jim Crow state. So that force is going on. So it's a lot. I think there should be a lot more books about it. And you have Tyler Perry, and he does his films, but I noticed that he sticks with certain themes. And I also feel that his characters tend to be very flattened. And I guess partly why I like to read great books is a lot of the books, the characters are just developed phenomenally. So anyone have any opinions on Atlanta and in the city? I have a lot of people, who I know. I lived there also in the 90s. I lived there for a brief period of time. So, and I remember going down there and my senior year, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is awesome. I really loved seeing so much Black success. And it was also around the time where the music scene was popping. So I can see the draw, and I can see why a lot of people relocated here, for different opportunities. So, yeah, so I think I have like one more slide to show.
Can I jump in there real quick about
Yes,
the
yes,
MLK era?
yeah,
If you don't mind hearing from the producer.
yeah, let's hear it.
So after the MLK era, I guess it was so profound on the consciousness of the country that it became a loop. And rather than showing the progressive parts of what was happening with the country, especially places like Atlanta, and the fact that we were, and I thought Fight Night offered that really well. They showed us owning cleaners, they showed us owning diners, they showed us being, captains in the police force. They showed us as doing really progressive things, and that's why and being, actors, movie stars, and it also showed that capitalists were visionaries about what they wanted for Atlanta and what they wanted for our people. And I thought, if anybody hasn't checked that out, please check it out because it's much more than a story about a robbery. It's about the culture of that town, and even why Muhammad Ali chose to fight in Atlanta. He could afford anywhere, but he chose Atlanta because he knew that was like a burgeoning nexus of our people, and he wanted to support that. So just wanted to chime
Yeah.
in on that. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you for that comment. Shout out to the Real HD Network. Exactly. So, yeah, that's partly why I really enjoy reading Tayari's works because, I pretty much lived a lot of my life in the North in New York, but like many of us, we have so much family. Many of us New Yorkers moved to Atlanta or Georgia, the Georgia area, and we go back and forth. Quite a few. My aunt lives down there now, hosts tons of cousins, so I have a connection there. Like I said, I used to live there, and I'm still interested in the success of the city, and they've accomplished a lot over the decades and they've changed. And I think it's just room for us to see more, hear more stories, and read more about a nexus of Black life, which is, ATL, baby. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. So let me get back to finally, oops. So if I had to rank, I forgot about this. I was like, okay, so how do I rank my books, her books, my picks in order? So for me, I think I like Silver Sparrow the best. I think that's my favorite, followed by Leaving Atlanta, followed by, I'm gonna be honest, The Untelling and American Marriage. I was going back and forth with, and I put The Untelling, and I think it's because I got into Ariana's, all the different characters opened my heart to that story. But American Marriage was really, really good too. So I don't know. But I put The Untelling in American Marriage. But they're all good. They really are excellent. And she's one of the best contemporary authors out there. And then more works by her. These are like short stories. um I was like, oh man, I wonder if she got anything new out back around 2021. And I came across Atlanta Noir, which opened me up to a whole world of the noir series, which for the noir series are published by this company called Askaic Books, Askaic, and they do these crime dark stories all around the globe. So if you put noir series in, you'll see the website and they have them for every city. They got a Kingston one, they got ones in Africa, they've got parts of the country. So I've read quite a few of them, but what they'll do is they'll pick an author that's based in that city to be the editor. So for Atlanta, Tiari's Atlanta Noir, she's the editor. But then they'll get authors to submit these short stories from that are written about that area. So it's not all written by her. They're stories that are written by different writers in the South and in Georgia, but they're all about that city. So you can listen to it on Audible, and there's some really good stories. And then she wrote a story in it called Caramel, which was about this girl who grew up as a foster. She was in a foster system because her mother had was addicted to drugs and lost her for a while, and she became friends with this other girl who was in the foster system. And then they lost contact because her mother was able to gain custody of her again. So then years go by, but the mother unfortunately relapsed. So at this point of the book, she's a grown woman and she's working at this seedy hotel in Atlanta. And her mother told her that this big time pastor is her father. But and he's kind of like a Eddie Long, like a really famous prosperity pastor, very rich. So she wants to try to find him so that she can connect with him. So she tells her friend, and come to find out, her friend is a sex worker for the pastor. And and so more to come with that, listen to it. It's a good story. It's a short story. So also there's this story called Disposition, and that's on Audible. That was written by Tayari, and it was performed by Gabrielle Union. So good. It is about uh, like homelessness, and it's disposition in two ways. Um, so that's really good. And then Half Light was another good one. So I listened to all of those. And like I said, she just said that she just finished the book. So I don't know when it's coming out, but I'm looking forward to it. And then I have my playlist here if you want to check out lots of music. And some of the songs on here are inspired by the different plots of the books that I mentioned, like Love and Happiness. That's Silver Sparrow, because Al Green, as y'all remember, he had a hot grit situation that happened. And that was reminds me of, the whole situation with James and Silver Sparrow. But I also looked up 1979, the year of leaving Atlanta when all those terrible kidnappings was going on. And Don't Stop Till You Get Enough by Michael Jackson was one of the songs out there. So it has a lot of the Welcome to Atlanta by Jermaine Dupri, No Scrubs, You Will Know. A lot of songs here. Leaving on the Midnight Train to Georgia, So Fresh and So Clean, Outcast, Georgia on My Mind, Ray Charles, Forevermore, Anthony David. He's like a underrated, like neo soul artist from that area. So check out some of those when you get a chance. So that wraps this episode. I had a lot of fun doing it because I really love that author. And so it was just fun delving into her books and the background behind them and the success, and learning and seeing what other content creators had to say about these different books. They really have touched me in different ways, from thinking about children, the kids, and the Leaving Atlanta situation, and American Marriage just really touched me, and The Untelling, and Silver Sparrow, all of them, the different themes. So they've enriched my life. So I really would suggest that you all pick up one of the books. And if you do, let me know how it is. That wraps today's show. Any other comments out there before I go?
Yeah, you had one comment
Okay.
when you were talking about marriage.
Oh, okay. Gigi on IG says most our people today are terrified of marriage. Maybe too much social media and lifetime TV marriage isn't popular, like the Cosby Show. Yeah, exactly. That's true. There's so many different views of it. Those of us Gen Xers, we were very programmed into, traditional marriages, the nuclear family, and then there's so much programming that has moved away from that or have diversified it. And now you're seeing the concept of just other ways that people can be in the world. And I just think it needs to be balanced. But it is. Some people are afraid of it. There are still a lot of people getting married, but and then we also know that the United States has a very high divorce rate. So it's a lot there. And that's, I think it's something that we need to talk about more. There is another book that I read this year called All Fours, which gets into marriage and um, you know, different topics related to it. And I thought about covering that, but it's a very racy book. So I want to make sure that I have some balanced people on that I can banter with about that about that book. Thank you for that comment though. I do think you're right. A lot of people are afraid of it. It's a deep partnership, it's deep commitment, and we are moving into a very individualistic time where everything is about, a lot of things. I won't say everything, but a lot of things are about self, individual. But ironically, because of the economy and a lot of other forces, we do need partnerships. And marriage is a partnership, and parenting is. And we need to learn how to love and partner with one another as time goes on, too. And your needs change, and we need that modeled for us and frameworks for it. And they're out there, but they're not talked about as much. Most of what we're seeing is just the messiness and the toxicity of it, instead of like healthy ways of partnering in the world. Anyhow, that's another topic that we'll get into. But thank you for today's episode. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And I'll see y'all next week where we'll be discussing some more great books.